In this video, we're going to take a behind-the-scenes look at how Canvas calculates grades. Along the way, I'll show a few points of confusion that generate a lot of questions from instructors and students, and I'll also walk through setting up your Canvas gradebook from scratch so that the math works out how you want it to. When we start thinking about how the gradebook works, there are really two concepts, points and weights. But the big overarching concept of how grades are calculated in the gradebook is weights. And by this I mean how much each assignment or each assignment group counts toward the final grade. In Canvas, you can weight assignments by using just points, by using assignment groups, or by using a combination of both. So let's explore this by looking at a few different scenarios. And I always like to start with the syllabus because that's where we start, right? So in the first scenario, I'm weighting assignments with points alone. So each item has a given number of points, and those points add up to the total possible points for the final grade. So let's take a look at this in Canvas. And everything that's graded shows up here on the assignments page. So anything I add points to, whether it's a quiz or a discussion or an assignment, it's all going to show up here on assignments. And I've just added the point values from my syllabus to each assignment here in Canvas. So the actual math that's happening here is pretty straightforward. So let's go to grades, let's go to our gradebook, and you can see I'm using test student to demonstrate. So let's say this student does perfectly on all the assignments up until the final. So you can see they've earned all the points possible so far, and they currently have a 100% for their grade. But then let's say they only earn 150 out of the 400 points possible on that final. And I want to start early with this points possible concept in this video with our simple example, because once the gradebook starts getting more complex, thinking about it in terms of how many points were earned over the total points possible becomes really important. Okay, so let's say they only get 150 on the final. And if I do the math on my calculator, and I know that there were 1,350 points possible, and this student earned a total of 1,100 points in this course. So that's 1,100 over 1,350 points possible. And if we do that math, that works out to an 81.48 basically. So let's go ahead and try it in the gradebook. So I'm going to give this student 150 points on their final. And you can see that Canvas does that math for me. And there we go. So let's move on to my next example, again, starting with the syllabus. And you can see it's a little more complex. I'm using groups, but I've set it so that each item is worth 100 points, so that within each group, each item is weighted equally. So if we look at this example in Canvas, you can see how I have this set up on the assignments page. I have the items separated out into groups, and each group is weighted according to how I have laid it out in the syllabus. Now let's hop in the gradebook and watch the math in action. So for this example, I've given test student 100 out of 100 on every single item in the course. And so you can see that the student has 100% in each assignment group, adding up to a total of 100% for the final grade. Now let's take a quick glance at the syllabus again, and we can see that there's 400 points total in the quiz group. So let's go ahead and give the student a 0 on one of these quizzes. So that would be that would drop that student's grade down to a 75% in the quizzes category, but that's only worth 20% of the final grade, so it brings down the total or final grade for this student to 95%. So once you set that up on your assignments page, Canvas then does the math for you here in the gradebook. Now let's go even deeper by using groups and weighting the assignments within each group by giving them different point values. And that adds even more complexity to the grading scheme. So you can see here, I've set this up in Canvas to match. I've set my weight for each assignment group, and then I've weighted the assignments within each group with points. So for example, my midterm is worth half as much as my final, and then that group total will contribute to 20% of the final grade. So going into my gradebook, again, I have this set initially so that test student has a 100% for the total, so they've earned all the points possible. But let's go ahead and play with our exams group. And let's say that test student does get that 100%, so 50 out of 50 on the midterm, but they don't do so well on the final. And this is going to have a bigger impact on their grade because it's worth more than the midterm. So let's go ahead and give test student a 50. So now let's think about it like this. Test student has earned 100 out of the total 150 points possible in this group. So that's about 2/3 of the points. So when we go to the end to our exams group, we can see that that dropped their grade for that group down to 66.67. And since that's worth 20% of the final grade, it dropped their total down to 93.33. And I would say this is the kind of gradebook where we get the most questions because it's simple for Canvas. Canvas just does the math based on what we tell it. But here's where we have instructors reaching out to say, this student's grade doesn't seem right or something like that, because it gets hard to kind of intuit it, like once it gets this complex. Especially when we start like combining it with some of these more advanced features that Canvas has, like displaying these as percentages. And then let's say on top of that, I tell my students at the beginning of the semester that I'll drop their lowest homework grade. And so then I come in here to my assignments page in Canvas, and I go to this group and I set a rule to ignore the lowest score in this group for each student. And I'm going to click Save. So now I can set it and forget it until I have that scenario where the student comes to me and they're saying it doesn't make sense. Because this can get a little tricky and confusing, but I'm going to ask you to stick with me here because I think this example provides like great insight into how gradebook math works, and it really solidified it for me in my brain. So hopefully it'll do the same for you and help you feel empowered to use a gradebook and confident that you know what's going on behind the scenes and able to answer those questions from students when you get them. So let's go ahead and go back into the gradebook and play with this a little bit and see what happens. So my test student currently has 100 on everything. So which grade would Canvas drop? It doesn't really matter. The student's still going to have 100. But let's go ahead and give them a 90 on this unit 4 and watch what happens. So I'm going to refresh so you can just kind of see what Canvas does. It turns this square yellow. So I know that this is the grade that Canvas is dropping based on the rule for this assignment group. Now let's play with it a little bit more because clearly this is the lowest grade in the group. It's a 90 when every other grade is 100. But let's go ahead and give the Unit 2 assignment an 85. Now this is the lowest percentage in the group. I'm going to refresh and see what happens. Canvas is still dropping the 90. Why do you think that is? I'm going to give you a second to think about that. So it goes back to what I said in the beginning about points earned over points possible. That's how we always want to think about the Canvas gradebook math. Because if these were all weighted the same, if these were all worth 100 points, the 85% would clearly be the lowest grade. But when we remove this assignment from the assignment group for test student, that changes the number of points possible. It's removing the assignment that's worth the most in this group, which means that every other point earned by this student in this group is suddenly worth a lot more. So although on the surface, based on percentages, this looks like a higher grade than this one, the ultimate impact on the student's grade is going to determine what Canvas drops. So let's go ahead and get out my calculator and let's check Canvas's math. Let's see how this works out. So I'm going to start by calculating the total points possible for this group now that this assignment has been eliminated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 plus 15 plus 50 to get the total points possible. So there are now 70 points possible in this assignment group. Now I'm going to calculate how many points this student earned. So they earned all 5 of these points. And this works out to 12.75. So they earned 12.75 points on this assignment, and they earned all 50 points here. So the student earned 67.75 points out of 70 points possible, which makes their grade based on dropping this assignment on 97, basically. So now let's try it dropping this assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out my calculator, and then I'm going to determine the points possible if I eliminate this assignment. So I'm going to have 5 plus 50 plus 100. So the total points possible based on dropping this assignment is 155. Now let's find out how many points the student earned on these 3 assignments. So we have the 5, they have the 50, and they have 90 points on this one, which brings their total to 145 over the total points possible, which was 155. And that brings the student's grade to a 93.5 or a 94. So you can see that the math checks out. Canvas is going to drop the grade based on what's going to benefit them the most. And again, this is just the more complex way of setting up your grading scheme. And so this becomes less intuitive the more complex it gets. So if these, if this was the example where all of the assignments were worth 100 points, this rule would be more intuitive and make more sense without getting your calculator out. And this same exact math is going to happen when we use some of the other more advanced features in Canvas. For example, if we decide to excuse a student from an assignment, it's going to change the number of points possible for that one student. Or if we use the assign to box to give, one student an additional assignment, it's going to change the number of points possible for that student. So again, this is just important math to understand what Canvas is doing behind the scenes. It's calculating the points earned over the points possible. And when you start using these advanced features, that's when that points possible number can change and make things a little bit more complicated and less intuitive. It's not to say you shouldn't do it. It's just that you want to go in with this understanding that that is how it's going to affect that student's grade. Okay, so hopefully you have your head wrapped around gradebook math and you have an idea of how you'd like to set up your gradebook. So for the rest of the video, I'm just going to very quickly and simply walk through how to set it up in Canvas in a new course. So you can see when I get a brand new course and I go to assignments, it gives me this one assignment group by default. So if I'm using this style where I'm simply weighting each assignment with a number of points, I don't really have to do anything special. I just need to create my assignments, my quizzes, my graded discussions, whatever those activities are, and make sure that I'm giving them the correct number of points, and the gradebook will do the rest. If, however, you're using something more complicated with the assignment groups, I'm going to walk through specifically how to set that up. So I'm just going to kind of move my canvas over a little bit so I can reference my syllabus as I work on this. And as I mentioned, I get this default group called assignments when I get a brand new course, but I don't have an assignment group called assignments. So I'm simply going to rename this first assignment group to homework and then add my other 3 groups. And the next thing I'm going to do is add the percentages for my syllabus. And to get to that setting, I'm just going to look for the 3-dot menu at the top right and click Assignment Groups Weight. And then I'm going to click the checkbox next to Weight Final Grade based on assignment groups. And here's where I can enter those percentages. And you can see Canvas is doing the math for me down here again, so I don't have to worry if I make a mistake. Canvas will tell me right here. Then I'm going to click Save. And now I've got these percentages applied, and all I have to do at this point is add each assignment, quiz, discussion, make sure I'm giving it the correct number of points, and that it's associated with the correct group. So I can simply set up the shell of each assignment or quiz or whatever from this page by clicking this little add button in the correct group. I'm going to call this Unit 1 and give it the correct number of points and click Save. And I can just keep doing this for all of my various, assignments, discussions, quizzes, whatever it is here. And then once I have the shells, I can just go in and click Edit to add my assignment instructions, set the rest of my settings, like what kind of submission, students are going to be turning in, all of those very important things, the due dates and everything. But that's really it. That's how you set up your gradebook to have that math. And as you saw earlier, you can click Edit. Once you have any assignments in the group, you'll be able to apply those rules. And I just wanted to quickly point out this never drop option down here, because as I mentioned in my example, Canvas was dropping the most important. Obviously, I've weighted this one with the most points, which indicates it's the most important assignment in the group. So I can use this feature down here, never drop, to say, yeah, take the lowest score away from this assignment group, but it can't be this one because this one's really important and all students really need to put a lot of effort into this one, and it's fine if any of these get dropped, but not this one. So Canvas, like I always say, is like a blank canvas. There's so many options to make it do whatever you want it to do. And the one thing that I will point out that Canvas Gradebook doesn't do is extra credit. So Canvas doesn't officially support extra credit. If you want to receive those extra credit assignment submissions via Canvas, I would recommend setting up a group called Extra Credit and making it worth 0% of the total grade. And then applying those points at the end of the semester, because there's no real easy or straightforward way to make Canvas do that extra credit math for you. And that's really it. If you have any questions or concerns, or you need help getting this set up, or you run into issues, you can always reach out to your ITC or contact 6Tech.